Hey guys, what's up? I have a couple of tips for you today on what, in my opinion, are some pretty useful exercises, or at least I think they are. So if you want to hear about that, stay tuned. Um, so firstly, I want to tell you a story. Like when I was 16, no, probably like, yeah, probably about 16, I switched from a one-handed backhand to a two-handed backhand. And I actually ended up with a slightly unconventional technique because I taught it to myself in front of the mirror at home. And one thing that I was noticing on it, particularly I think when I was like 17 or 18, around that time, is I was getting crazy sharp angles across the court. Like I would hit the ball and it would just like, it would go like, it would be a hard shot and it would go like into the service box. We're just like crazy angle. And for some reason, at about like age 19, that shot just disappeared. I could not hit that shot anymore. I tried, but I just couldn't do it anymore. And I think I've figured out why that is. Because I had different theories about it, right? I thought there's one exercise that somewhat helped me get closer to it, which is going like side to side like this. It just helps for me to get like a natural feeling of the tennis shot. And actually, I would go a bit further than that, like one step. I don't have space to properly show it to you here. But because of the dynamism of the movement, it sort of forces your body into simplicity and instinct, as opposed to breaking down everything in your head and trying to be too technique focused, for lack of a better phrase. But what I think is really probably one of the main root causes of being able to hit this crazy angle, I think, is the grip that I was unknowingly using. And I used to think that I always suspected grip might have a part to play, and I always thought that just having a more conservative forehand grip on the two-handed backhand would allow to get those greater angles. But that's not entirely true. The most important part in me being able to hit those crazy angles was actually, I believe, I still have yet to properly test this out and regain this crazy backhand that I had. I believe it's actually the placement of the backhand grip of the right arm, or the dominant arm if you're a lefty. So what I'm saying is that you'd think that this was as conservative. Oh, sorry. You'd think that this is as conservative as you can get, right? Just like the hammer grip. We're always taught that's the most conservative you can go. What I believe, though, is that what was allowing me to hit those crazy angles was that my right arm was actually basically leaning slightly towards a forehand grip. And if you watched my previous video, you'll know that the more conservative the grip, the further it goes in that direction. If the sharper the angle of the shot relative to the ball. Relative to the court. Sorry. So In other words, if I have a very extreme grip on the backhand and I just naturally sort of hit like this, it's going to go like pretty conservatively, unless I do some funky things with my technique. If I go very extreme, it'll almost naturally go that way. Whereas if I'm very conservative, it sort of feels like it wants to go this way. And if I go even more conservative, it wants to go even more that way. So I'm thinking that maybe it does help to have a fairly conservative forehand grip to get that sharp angle. But I don't think it matters too much. I think you could even just have a normal forehand grip and then just slide the backhand ever so slightly in the other direction, depending on how sharp you want to go. I don't think it takes much, honestly. And then it goes really sharply. But I have an exercise to propose for you, if you want to try and learn this shot. It might feel a little strange, but I actually believe this is a really great exercise in general. Basically use just 2 fingers. So you can do this on the forehand side as well, but I have a specific reason for recommending this on the backhand side in this video. So use 2 fingers, or even just the 1 finger, and go on the full continental. And then there's reasons to just use a couple of fingers, but I'll get to that in a minute, because there's another reason that I'm recommending this right now, which is if you do this and you add your backhand, your right hand to this, what you'll see is that it's very uncomfortable to have your right hand all the way on continental. You actually have to be a little past continental into like even more conservative grips. And then what you do is you just like go slowly and let the racket swing. And that's where having that 2 or even 1 finger, so I'll go back down to even 1 finger, is very helpful for learning the feel of the shot. Because what you're doing in tennis most of the time is accentuating or leveraging the forces that are already happening. So like you feel the racket drop, boom, boom. I used to do a lot of, well, I still do a lot of air swings, but when I used to do a lot of shadow swings as a teen, when I first actually, here's another story. When I first started doing this 1 finger, 2 finger thing, it's actually because I fractured this finger right here. I guess it's my fourth finger, whatever you call that one. Index? Is that my index finger? I really should know that, if that's the case. So it was fractured playing basketball with friends, like the first time ever, at lunch at school, and the basketball just like, bam, jammed my finger and actually fractured one of the bones. So it was like, I had it in this like cast thing to like immobilize it. But I was very addicted to tennis, so in front of my window in my room, I would do this. And because it made the racket much more loose, I could feel the forces running through it. And I would say, I'd be like, oh, this one feels like, wa-pow. Or like, whoochoo. Kapow. Yeah, and same feeling on the backhand. It's where you're redirecting the forces like a sling, and it feels really nice. And actually, I think that this is great. This exercise, like either side that you use it on, is really great for getting good understanding of the feeling of what shots should feel like in tennis. Because the forces are so evident to you, and they become more subtle and harder to feel when you grip the racket with a fuller grip. But because you've sensitized yourself to it and paid attention to it, your brain sort of picks up on it better. I also find that for shadow swings, I found that doing shadow swings in front of a mirror could be a bit of a crutch, because I was relying on what I was seeing in the mirror to see if my shot looks good, right? Looks like it's the way it should. And as soon as I didn't have the mirror in front of me, and I was like just doing it without seeing a reflection, I couldn't tell if what I was doing was right. Whereas I found that I could actually do this 2-finger thing without a mirror and still feel all the moments within the stroke much more clearly. So yeah, great for a couple of reasons, and yeah, one of which is if you just go on a continental grip and then add the hand naturally, it's really great for learning that angle backhand. And there's different ways of hitting angles. There's not just one way. The second exercise I wanted to show you was actually that one that I described earlier, where you're going from side to side, but with more space than I have here, and it's just really one leap to one side. So like, if you imagine I was all the way over here, so I just hit my forehand, pretty much like that, and that one's a fun one. I find it's very good. Again, it's good for sensitizing your body to the movement. Because I believe your brain, because it's like jumping from one place to another. Well, for one, it's using the natural momentum of your body, right? Because we all know, we don't necessarily know how to hit a ball the best way, but we know how to walk well. We know how to jump side to side very well. Our body's learned those movements. And the tennis stroke is just an extension of those movements. Like if you're walking, it doesn't take much to add on to that and make it a tennis stroke, because we're already moving our bodies in the most efficient way possible, because we have these amazing AI systems in our brain that have negged all the insecurities in efficiencies in our movement. There we go. The other thing is that because it's like a quick shot, you may have heard of the kinetic chain. The kinetic chain is the concept that you're adding each part of the kinetic chain one on top of the other. So legs, then butt, then torso, then arms. And it's pretty intuitive, but if you're trying to think about stringing all these pieces together, getting the right feel is very difficult. But if you're jumping from side to side, each part of the kinetic chain is added on top of one another very like the gap of time between them is very small, so you can't think about it. But you have to trust your body to properly figure all that stuff out, which is the best way to do it. And then when it does become sort of more dramatic, the difference between them, you have that feeling correctly. I'm very big on, I think feeling is a great thing. Field Tennis Online, if you know that guy, he's great. I much recommend his channel and his videos. He has lots of good stuff to teach. And I think that a big factor of why this kind of teaching is so effective is because we overlook the fact that we don't learn things consciously. Really, a lot of it is built from our, for lack of a better word, like AI systems that run these trial and error operations at greater and greater levels of abstraction. Yeah. Sorry, my screen keeps on turning off. I gotta set my screen up next time so it doesn't go to sleep so easily. I have something else I want to talk about. Those are my 2 exercises for you. I hope you enjoy them. Use them, adapt them. Whatever. Take whatever works for you. There's nothing better than hitting a ball on a court, obviously. But sometimes hitting a ball on a court and doing something else can be the best thing. But I had further thoughts on biomechanics and grips to share with you, I guess continuing off of the previous video, really. So I told you last week that there's, more than one way to skin a cat, right? More than one way to find angle. And I've thought about that a bit since last video, and I've come up with a few extra things to think about maybe. For example, the natural arc that the arm follows is something like this. We sort of have to force ourselves to do this. This is okay as well. But what I'm trying to say is that the higher the racket is relative to the body, with great emphasis on relative to the body, the more the racket faces this way. So it's like facing that way now. Now it's facing straight towards you. Whoa, 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 whoa. Now this has a particular relevance, I believe, to angle, and there's a way to leverage this to create angle. I think a good example is Nick Kyrgios. I'm sure there's plenty of other good examples, but I want to use an extreme grip example, and I guess because I'm an Aussie, I sort of know his game. Like I've watched his games more than some other players. I'm sure there's other great examples out there. But with this extreme grip, I was watching him and I was noticing, I think that he like lowers his body like this, much more extremely than a lot of players do. And particularly when he's like going over the head like that. Sorry, I don't have much space to make a really good impression here. But I think sometimes when he's going for those extreme angles, it helps him to have his body at a more... And of course he eventually like comes up off it like that. But to hit when he's hitting the ball, he's still almost like in a fairly inclined angle, which you'll notice if I just stand straighter, means that relative to his body, he's hitting the ball really high. Sorry, my screen just turned off again. And what that means is that by having his body lower like this at a flatter angle, he's allowing himself to hit the ball at a higher point relative to his body, which allows him to get more angle. I think Nadal, who's obviously well known for having an extreme grip, my feeling is that if you compare him to Federer, for example, who's at the extreme other end, like if you think Federer, Djokovic, Nadal, Djokovic bang in the middle, semi-western, Federer relatively conservative, Rafa relatively extreme. Actually, it's kind of perfect because Federer is about as conservative as Rafa is extreme. If you call full continental conservative and full continental on the other side extreme, they're both like just a bit off it like that. Federer's like that. So that's kind of cool that the big three have sort of the range of the racket between them. I like that a lot. But to my eye, there's more like up and down like this in Nadal's movement than there is in the Federer, Djokovic class. Like they both have it because it's part of the correct sort of tennis technique. But it would appear to me that Rafa has it more, which would make sense because to get the angles, getting that lower body angle is advantageous. Now, there's one last thing I wanted to say on this point of the lower body facilitating a higher racket height relative to the body and a shorter angle by consequence, and that is running shots. Now, you'll often see that a shot on the run, players will be able to hit mad angles on. And often on these stretch running shots, particularly if you think of Djokovic, like they're stretching out as far as they can, and they're like this. And if I stand up, you'll see that if I stand straight, the relative angle or height to my body of the racket is super high, which I believe is part of what facilitates this mad angle creation. But I guess what I'm telling you is that just by changing the grip to be a little more conservative, you can achieve these mad angles without being in these stretched positions. And when you do get into those stretched positions, well, watch out because you'll get more angle. Yeah. So those are some thoughts. There's more to it that I want to add, but it'll be difficult for me to put it into words and properly explain it. So I think that's a good place to end it for me today. I hope you learned something. Yeah. Maybe in a couple of years you'll see me hitting some crazy angles if I can get that backhand back. Yeah. Anyway, if you liked it, give it a like and have yourself a merry old day.